Okay, I believe we have our quorum. I see staff is all ready for us. What? We just lost Miss Bailey.
No, I got a strange message that said turn off your camera. I don't know why.
I think that's for everyone but us.
Oh,
I'm thinking. If you all are ready, I'm ready. We can begin.
Sounds good.
Are we recording?
This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you.
We're
Okay.
recording.
Thank you. Good morning. The time is 10:01, and I call the July 21st, 2022 Planning Board meeting to order. We have with us Vice Chair Bailey and Commissioner Washington, and I am Chair Shapiro. Please note that the deadline for all participant pre-registration and for all submission materials and exhibits was 12 noon on the Tuesday before this meeting. The deadline is posted clearly on our website and stated in bold red in our weekly published planning board agenda. Registered speakers may join the meeting with the link provided in the email, which was provided by the planning board office, or you may listen by phone utilizing the call-in number provided in the email. Of course, anyone can tune in to watch the planning board meeting via live stream. If you wish to speak or become a person of record, you may use our online web form. In addition, the commissioners were joined by Delisa Coleman, our Associate General Counsel. We have Jessica Jones, Planning Board Administrator, Marie Proctor, our Senior Technical Hearing Writer, James Hunt, the Division Chief of the Development Review Division. I believe we have Derek Berlage, the Deputy Planning Director as well. Kenneth Flanagan is going to guide us through the exhibits, and Ryan Cron is going to help us on technical issues behind the scenes. And for the public, as well as my fellow commissioners, we're going to take the order of cases will be as described in the agenda. We'll just follow it right through. So on to item one. The first item under administrative agenda items is a resolution of appreciation. And this is for Alicia Franklin Edwards, who is retiring. This is Prince George's County Planning Board Resolution number 2022-85. Just a few quick words on Ms. Franklin Edwards. She is an administrative supervisor with the county's Department of Parks and Recreation. She's retiring from the commission effective August 1st, 2022. She's 29 years of service, providing administrative support and leadership through multiple divisions. She, including the Management Services Division, which had 70 career and part-time staff in the area of budgeting and human resources, training and development. She was instrumental in the startup of the administrative office for the Prince George's Sports and Learning Complex, as well as the department's customer service help desk. And she earned many, many performance awards for her contribution to projects and initiatives. She served on numerous committees, including the Commission's Diversity Council, the first Employee Wellness Committee, the first CAPRA Accreditation Committee. She's a recipient of numerous awards, VIP and service awards, and just a great career. And we thank you for all of the work that you have done, and we hope you enjoy a well-earned retirement. So, commissioners, is there a motion to approve the resolution? And
Motion.
any words you may have?
Motion to approve resolution and thank her for her 24 years of service and enjoy retirement.
And I associate myself with both your comments in second.
Right. You may hear just a little bit of envy from our side around that, but that's all right. Enjoy the retirement. We have a motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second by Commissioner Washington. I will call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
But I.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it, 3-0. Thank you again for all of your service, Ms. Franklin Edwards. So next item on the agenda is to approve the draft minutes from July 7th, 2022. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve draft minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Motion by Vice Chair Bailey, second by Commissioner Washington. No discussion. I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
But I.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it, 3-0. The draft minutes from July 7, 2022 are approved. Next, item 3, we have three pieces of legislation. There was a fourth that has been removed from the agenda. So just to be clear, item 3D has been removed from the agenda. So we're taking up items 3C and F. Is that right? Item 3.
Is it 3E?
Oh, you know what? I'm jumping. Ignore me. I'm jumping ahead in the agenda. So we're in item 3A. So the first legislative item is CB 65 2022. And let me turn to staff, either Ms. Hightower or Mr. Williams, who will take us through each one of these items. We will act on each one of the items as we hear them, and there will be 4 items. Ms. Hightower.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the Planning Board. For the record, my name is Raina Hightower, Intergovernmental Affairs Coordinator. I'll be discussing CB 65 and CB 68 and CB 71. Chad Williams will pick up CB 69. CB 65, this bill permits by right or through special exception approval, heavy industrial uses in the RE zone under certain circumstances. It is believed this bill will affect only 2 properties. Staff has serious planning and zoning concerns with the proposed legislation. One of the purposes of the RE zone is to develop 1-acre large lot single-family detached homes. Heavy industrial uses involve adverse off-site impacts on the environment and surrounding properties. Just to let the board know, some of the uses that are industrial include concrete, or brick manufacturing, sand and gravel wet processing facilities, commercial field depots, slaughterhouses, and solid waste processing facilities. All of these uses could possibly be permitted under this bill on these properties. Heavy industrial uses in residentially zoned lands are extremely inconsistent with the purposes of residential zones. Staff has pointed out that if the district council moves forward with this bill, that there are structural and organizational issues within the bill that should be addressed. Staff recommends that the planning board vote to oppose CB 65 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Hightower. Again, we're going to take these up one at a time. So you have heard, Commissioners, you've heard from staff who oppose this bill, CB 65 2022. Any questions for staff?
No questions, but vote to oppose. CB 65 it is?
See, that's correct.
And I second.
We have a motion and a second to oppose, to take staff's recommendation to oppose CB 6522. I've read this through thoroughly. I agree with the staff's recommendations and appreciate all your work on this. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it, and we have agreed with staff recommendation to oppose CB 65 2022. Next item on our agenda is CB 68 2022, and I believe that is you as well, Ms. Hightower.
Yes, this bill was presented at the request of the planning board. This bill incorporates technical revisions to the new zoning ordinance to ensure that the code continues functioning as intended. CB 68 also incorporates several legislative text amendments passed by the district council at the end of 2021 that could not be included in the last corrective bill, which was CB 98 2021 because of timing. Planning department staff has worked very closely with district council members and district council staff. CB 68 is essential to implementing the new zoning ordinance. Staff recommends the planning board vote to support CB 68 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Hightower. I just want to thank not just you and your team and our staff, but also the district council members and the district council staff for all their work on this. It's a lot of effort that goes into a bill like this. So any questions, commissioners, on this? If not, I look for a motion.
No questions. Vote to support CB 68. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a question, Commissioner Washington?
I did not, Madam Vice Chair. I will second your motion.
We have a collegial motion and a second on CB 68 2022. Motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second by Commissioner Washington. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 3-0 to support the staff's recommendation to support CB 68 2022. Next item on our agenda is CB 69 2022. I believe this is Mr. Williams. And take it away.
Yes, sir. That's correct. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, Chad Williams with the Countywide Planning Division. Unfortunately, I won't be quite as succinct as Ms. Hightower, but this is an important bill, and you'll see why as I go through the key points. CB 69 2022 is a bill to amend the zoning ordinance to enable any property that was formerly placed in the MXT or mixed use transportation oriented zone prior to April 1 of this year, or the effective date of the new ordinance, to elect to conform to the requirements of the CGO zone, regardless of the zone that it was placed in the countywide map amendment. This bill is very broad in nature and would impact over 7,000 potential properties that were formerly zoned MXT across the county. CB 69 raises substantial policy implications both for the county and the planning department and would amount to changes in zoning that were not contemplated in the CMA process and which would not be the result of any comprehensive or piecemeal rezoning procedures. And there are several key areas of staff concerns to kind of distill it down a bit. The first deals with former MXT property located inside designated Plan 2035 general plan centers. And the most substantial and potentially even devastating policy change that would result from CB 69 would allow former MXT properties in these centers and also some properties along US 1 and the Innovation Corridor, all of which receive the appropriate transit-oriented activity center base zone in the CMA to develop as if they were CGO instead. And there was much discussion in the development of the new zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations about the importance of these locations, the importance of implementing Plan 2035, and allowing property to develop as if CGO instead of these transit-oriented base zones would likely undermine both Plan 2035 and county goals for these important locations to develop their full potential. And the department feels that this is a result to be avoided at all costs. Therefore, at minimum, staff recommend that CB 69 2022 be amended to exclude former MXT properties in these locations. The next area of concern touches on insufficient time to fully evaluate the impacts of the new ordinance and the CMA. It's only been about 3.5 months since the ordinance and the CMA took effect, and this is not enough time to fully evaluate how we're doing with the new zones, how the zoning ordinance is progressing, and the results of the CMA technical mapping exercise. We believe it's premature to propose a bill of such significance and impact as CB 69, particularly given those generous grandfathering and transition provisions that we worked with the council and the builder community and many others to incorporate in the new zoning ordinance. Of note, in particular, are sections 27-1900 and 24-1900, which are the 2-year overlap transition periods where all development can use the former zoning ordinance and former subdivision regulations and develop as if they had their former zone up until April 1st, 2024. It should be noted in this kind of subcategory of our concerns that the council spent much time debating the possible inclusion of a legacy MXT zone in the new ordinance, and it concluded that the MXT had really outlived its utility. It's failed to live up to its initial intent and purposes, and as such, an LMXT or legacy MXT zone was unnecessary. We're concerned that CB 69 would serve to make the new CGO zone essentially the same as if they had created an LMXT zone and undermine the policy considerations that the council debated at length back in 2018. The next category of concern deals with General Assembly of Maryland's intent and community expectation. As you know, in 2021, the General Assembly amended certain state laws to implement requirements on the CMA process, which was motivated by significant resident and community organization concern in the county. And as a result, the district council, the planning board, and the planning department made a policy decision to make no technical rezoning decision in this CMA that was not the result of a demonstrated error in the council's approved guide to new zones. So for the council to now adopt such a broad and impactful bill as CB 69 less than a year after the approval of the CMA would, we think, have substantial and long-running repercussions, including a conscious step away from the policies guiding the 3-year CMA process and the possible erosion of public trust in the technical process of CMA, which could then in turn undermine the success of the zoning rewrite itself. Turning to intensification concerns, allowing all former MXT properties in the county, all 7,000 of those, to develop as if they had a CGO zone would constitute de facto rezonings of substantial acreage, much of which is in the most important locations in the county, our transit locations, through a legislative zoning amendment and outside of the normal procedures for rezoning available through a sectional map amendment or a zoning map amendment. In many cases, zoning intensification would occur for such properties located outside the Plan 2035 centers. In the development of the CMA, staff and all stakeholders, the council, the board, we ended up identifying 47 groupings of former MXT properties that were outside centers. CB 69 would essentially constitute intensification for about 36 of these 47 groupings, where former MXT properties were placed in the residential multifamily 12, residential multifamily 20, residential multifamily 48, commercial neighborhood, or commercial service zones. So these would all, if they were developing as if they were CGO, they would essentially be intensifications of the zoning they were assigned in the CMA. Finally, and the last topic that I'll go over in the staff discussions are technical comments on the bill. Should the council choose to proceed with CB 69, in addition to our recommendation that the board consider advising the council to remove Plan 2035 locations, center locations from the bill, we suggest that the council consider tightening the requirements for the applicability of CB 69. We think it's important to clarify that when they use the terminology, any approved site plan or preliminary plan of subdivision that triggers the ability for former MXT to develop as if it had the CGO zone, those site plans or preliminary plans should also have been approved before April 1, 2022. And this would mean that the CB 69 would focus on a retroactive rather than a prospective application. And it would somewhat mitigate CB 69 to a small degree by precluding any approvals after April 1, 2022 from granting access for these properties to the uses, the regulations, and so forth of the CGO zone. So in summation, the Planning Department recommends that the Planning Board oppose CB 69 2022. And thank you. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I appreciate all the work that you put into this. I think it certainly demonstrates the staff's pretty grave concerns about the impact of this effort. So questions for Mr. Williams, questions for staff, commissioners?
I would only ask that I fully understand your recommendation is to oppose. Is it oppose as drafted? Because at several points during your overview, you discuss amendments. So
it could be opposed as drafted if the board chooses to do so, because we would certainly recommend amendments if the council chooses to move forward. It's our hope that the council will not choose to move forward, in all honesty, on this bill. But
okay,
recognizing that the council has the ultimate say, it is extremely important that the center-based zones are not subject to this bill, in our opinion. And also with that, those technical comments that we recommend as well. So oppose as drafted may well be what you choose to go forward with, should you choose to.
no, but it sounds like your recommendation is oppose, not as draft. You would rather not see the legislation. I just wanted clarity because you mentioned amendments.
Absolutely. In a perfect world, we would rather not see this bill.
Okay,
Not move forward.
with that, Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt staff's recommendation and oppose CB 69.
I second, but I also have a question.
My apologies.
That's okay. Do we then send comments as to why we oppose, or just leave it just oppose in this case?
I think the level of detail that staff has provided is what will be incorporated into the communication, because they're very clear about why they oppose it, and we'll make sure that gets communicated to the district council, to the council.
I wanted to make sure that was included. Thank you.
Thank you. We're still in discussion, but I had a question for staff as well. Do you, I hate to have you put words in somebody else's mouth, but what's the intention of this? And is there some kind of collaboration that we can have to accomplish the goal that the council or the council members have? Let's assume the goal is not to undermine the integrity of the new zoning, right? That there's some reason why they're moving this, encouraging this.
I can answer that from an outside perspective, not directly linked to CB 69, but based on testimony received during the CMA process. We received testimony from a small number of properties. I want to emphasize a small number of properties that were concerned that they had development approvals, which I remind are grandfathered, and their subsequent steps are grandfathered, and there's another year and 9 months remaining in the 2-year overlap period where they can continue to subsequent steps and have access to all the uses of the former MXT zone. There was testimony received that certain property owners and developers felt that they received the incorrect zone through the path of MXT and MUI zones outside of designated centers. That was one of the 5 paths of the council's approved guide to new zones guiding the CMA process. They specifically asked for the CGO zone instead through that process. But as you know, as a technical rezoning exercise, that was not an option. And this seems like an attempt to get back at that. There was actually more testimony received from former MXT properties that were receiving the IE zone that wished to have intensification to the IH zone. But there was some testimony seeking CGO.
Okay, thank you for that. And Director Checkley, you're here. Do you have anything you want to add to this as well while you're on the line? You're okay? Okay. Thank you for that clarification. It's quite helpful. So we have a motion to oppose, not as drafted, but to oppose. And we have a motion by Vice Chair Bailey, a second by Commissioner Washington, or I'm sorry, the motion was Commissioner Washington, yeah?
Right.
Yes.
Second was Vice Chair Bailey. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 3-0 to oppose CB 69 2022. And thank you, Mr. Williams, for all your work on this.
Thank you.
And the rest of the team as well. So we're back to Ms. Hightower for CB 71 2022.
Yes, Chairman and members of the board, CB 71 allows apartment housing for elderly or physically handicapped families in the local transit-oriented edge zone with special exception approval. The bill also allows the density for elderly or physically handicapped families to be twice the density normally allowed in that zone. Many of the provisions within CB 71 2022 are unnecessary because of the Planning Board's corrective bill, which I discussed earlier, which is CB 68, eliminates the special exception requirement for this use. Many CB 68 proposes to permit the use in many of the non-residential transit-oriented zones. If this bill is enacted, it will conflict with the bill CB 68. Staff believes the language in this bill permitting twice the normal density for the use in only one zone should be deleted if the council should move forward. Staff believes that the district council should have a broader policy discussion on which zones should be permitted to increase density for this use. Staff recommends deferring discussions on increased density for this use until the 2023 comprehensive review of the new code. With that being said, staff recommends that the planning board vote to oppose CB 71 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hightower. Questions for Ms. Hightower, board members? If not, is there a motion?
Motion to support staff recommendation to oppose.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Motion by Vice Chair Bailey, second by Commissioner Washington to oppose. No further discussion. I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 3-0 to oppose. Take staff's recommendation to oppose. Thank you, Ms. Hightower. Thank you for all your work. Okay. Moving on to items, these are Parks and Rec items. We have 3 items because item 3D has been removed from the agenda. So we have items 3C, E, and F. Let's start with item 3C. And I believe there's a change in who is presenting this. So I'll ask staff to introduce themselves.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Ewing.
I believe we first have up our departments, the county's land preservation, parks and recreation plan. As we get that loaded, I'll get started. Good morning, Chair Shapiro and members of the board. For the record, my name is Sandra Ewing. I am the Assistant Chief for the Park Planning and Development Division of the Department of Parks and Recreation. With me today are Tanya Hedgepeth, Supervisor for Park Planning, and Chauncey Robs, Lead GIS and Data Specialist and Co-Project Manager for this LPPRP. Our team is here today to share with you the department's draft of the Land Preservation, Parks and Recreation Plan. We are here representing the Parks Department, Director Bill Tyler, Deputy Director Christian Gabriel, and Division Chief Bridget Stesney. The 2022 LPPRP is a requirement of the state of Maryland, and it is to be updated every 5 years.
Ms. Ewing, hold on one sec. We've got a bit of a echo. I think Mr. Robs, maybe you may need to mute until it's your turn. There we go. Okay, take it away, Ms. Ewing.
No problem. The 2022 LPPRP is a requirement of the state of Maryland and is updated every 5 years. Each county prepares a submission to meet the guidelines established by the Department of Natural Resources. The department's document includes background data, recommendations for all of the parkland, agricultural land, and natural resource land in the county. Our process included a detailed online engagement strategy, which was activated during the pandemic. This outreach included our statistically valid survey, which was a countywide survey on parks and recreation. This survey captured responses on how our residents currently use our recreation facilities and their desire for future facilities and programs. The team also led listening sessions and coordination meetings with representatives from the municipalities who provide facilities and receive program open space funding. Although our county has exceeded the state's minimum requirement for acreage for parkland, the department has included strategies to improve our level of service by identifying recommendations for facility expansion, land acquisition by service area, and amenity type. This was completed using the analysis of park access and by establishing park equity areas for focused investment. The department will submit the LPPRP in August, and this document, along with the form of the 2040 plan, will be used to guide park development and natural resource planning decisions. This document is the work of the park planning, land acquisition and development review sections, along with the members of the planning department's environmental planning section. I thank them all for their hard work and commitment over this last year. For the plan's purpose, we just want to highlight that it helps to ensure that the recreational needs of the county's residents and visitors will be met efficiently. It ties into our counties and states' growth management strategies. It directly implements our Formula 2040 plan and our Plan 35. It emphasizes our preservation goals for our natural, agricultural, cultural, and historic resources. And it ties into the significance of park and recreation and land acquisition for both the county and the state. And then most importantly, completion and submission of this plan allows the county and its municipalities to pursue grants through the state's program, Open Space program. And this funding allows us to acquire parkland and also do development of park facilities. With the next slide, I will pass it to co-project leader, Chauncey Robb, who will tell you more about the project's background.
Thanks, Tanya. Good morning. For the record, My name is Chauncey Ross, and I will provide an overview of the park inventory and the data sources that were used to support the LPPRP. A key component of the LPPRP is the park inventory. The park inventory provides an overview of park ownership and the amenities within the park system. The park inventory is a mandatory section within the LPPRP that is composed of two parts. The first requirement is identifying public landowners in the county. The Department of Parks and Recreation manages more than 28,000 acres of parkland. Within the document, we also show public landowners at the federal, state, and municipal levels. Their land holdings total more than 6,000 acres. Combined, there are more than 32,000 acres of parks and open space in Prince George's County. Next slide, please. The second phase of the park inventory is quantifying the amount of outdoor recreational amenities. A focal point of the LPPRP is outdoor recreational spaces, and there are more than 1,500 outdoor park amenities that are managed and owned by the Department of Parks and Recreation. Of those, 238 are playgrounds. There are more than 300 athletic fields. Specifically, there are 165 rectangular fields, which includes football, soccer, multi-purpose fields, and 175 diamond fields, which include baseball and softball fields. We also have a large number of hard courts, which includes tennis, basketball, futsal, and pickleball courts. Next slide, please. The LPPRP is a data-intensive document, and we used a variety of sources to support our work. We compiled information and guidance from the Formula 2040 Functional Master Plan for Parks and Recreation and Open Space. We also conducted a survey that was completed by ETC Institute. ETC Institute specializes in market research for governmental organizations, and one of the areas of expertise is park and recreation surveys. The department also procured ETC to complete a similar survey for the 2017 LPPRP. And the goal for the 2022 survey was to collect 1,200 completed surveys from county residents, and that number was exceeded by 32%. On the next slide, Tanya will provide key findings from the survey. Next slide, please.
Ms. Hedgepeth, I think you're on mute. We're not hearing you. Say again. No, sorry, we can't hear you. Take your time there. Take a second. You'll figure it out. Not yet.
Is it frozen? I can't see her.
She's moving. She's just on the wrong device.
Okay. I actually can pick up from here, and Tanya, if you want to join me in my office, you're definitely welcome to.
You could nod your head while Ms. Ewing is talking.
And she could actually probably jump in and pick it up if she wants to, because we're just around the corner. But key findings from our survey, many of them I bet you all have heard. Trails continue to be our #1 amenity, both desired for more trails and used by our patrons. We're doing a number of things to support that use and expand them throughout the county. Many of our trails that are recommended are difficult in our master plan of transportation, which is being updated now. We're partnering on, are difficult to actually construct because of wetlands or other features. And so we've identified strategies for partnerships with other agencies and coming up with ways to create new routes within residential and commercial developments to create that trail connectivity. As Chauncey mentioned, we have more than 18,000 acres held in preservation and conservation. Many of these are stream valley parks, floodplains, and wetlands, which tie to that core function of the commission as a whole. Our rural and agricultural areas are more than 90,000 acres, or 29% of our county. And then like we mentioned, we've met the statewide standard for level of service for parkland, which is great for our POS strategy. But however, we continue to identify ways to get better. And we understand that there are equity disparities in some of our communities, which we've identified, and we will use that information to guide our CIP and operational planning in the upcoming years. The survey findings highlighted.
Ms. Ewing, hold on one sec. We're getting feedback because Ms. Hedgepeth is actually on. She's now available for us if you want to switch. And otherwise, I think she's muted. So now you can go ahead.
I'll finish out this slide and then we'll give Tanya an opportunity to jump in. And then from our survey, we learned that residents want us to focus on maintaining our existing parks and facilities. We know that our system is kind of an aging and growing system at the same time, which much of it grew at the same time as our county grew. They would like for us to purchase more land for parks, which we are actively doing, and then focus on building new indoor facilities such as pools, ice arenas, and indoor sports fields. While we identified in our recommendations that some of our objectives may not have been accomplished yet, that we are making steady progress on achieving many of our identified goals, and we've developed additional implementation strategies and actions in this LPPRP. Next slide.
So good morning. My apologies for the technical issues this morning. I sometimes have them, and this was the worst time for it to happen, but it did.
No problem at all.
Good morning. My name is Tanya Hedgepeth, for the record. I am the park planning supervisor here with the Department of Parks and Recreation. Assigned to talk to you about some of the key findings from our plan. As a result of our data analysis, we did identify some challenges that we've had since the issuance of our last LPPRP in 2017. I know our slides are very wordy. We did this on purpose to give you an overall summary of the actual plan document. But what I'll do is I'll touch upon a few of them for the sake of time. As mentioned, during the pandemic, our trails and outdoor areas were well used. Maintenance and cleanliness of these areas has been a top priority. We still get a lot of calls about trash and debris, and this has placed some strain on our maintenance staff. So meeting the increased demand for our access to our trails, our outdoor gathering spaces, has caused some challenges posed by the coronavirus pandemic. The areas inside the Beltway are the most densely populated, and we have had some challenges in regards to finding large spaces inside the Beltway for acquisition in order to improve access for our parkland to those in our denser areas. But we have utilized some innovative ways to connect residents with our services using our mobile vans. And so what we've been doing is bringing recreational opportunities to those people. We have had some additional challenges in meeting or exceeding our tree canopy goals to further improve, our variety of different services. Right now, we're meeting a 52% goal. But the benefits of the tree canopy, as you can see, with the extreme heat, having an extensive tree canopy is very important. It will help in reducing our summer peak temperatures, reducing air pollution, as well as providing wildlife habitats and enhancing our property values. Like, who doesn't want to live on a tree-lined street? So those are just a few of our challenges that we've identified in our plan. Next slide, please. So in addition to challenges, there are some opportunities that we've identified. Some of the major opportunities include creating new developments in and around the metro stations, in accordance with our 2014 approved general plan, as well as our plan 2035. We have 25 metro stations along the blue, green, and orange lines. And we do own a significant amount of land at or near these stations. This can also lend an opportunity to expand on park and recreational opportunities for those in the more dense areas as identified. The department has also embarked on the development of several master plans for our larger regional parks. These include Watkins Regional, Walker Mill, and Casca. And Fairland is next on the list. So what we want to do is, develop these master plans to help guide long-term investment in and around our regional parks. And then we've also talked a lot about our trails, as it has been identified as an important amenity. And what we're trying to do is work to expanding our trail network, especially in our central and northern areas, parts of the county, with hopes of improving our public health. Next slide, please. We have had several major accomplishments over the last 5 years. So what I want to do is just touch on a few of those. We've added more than 1,200 acres of parkland, and we've completed more than 120 facilities projects. We've adopted a plan to develop a network of several multi-generational centers in order to produce a mix of indoor facilities, such as aquatics and others. And there is also a study underway for centers to serve an additional 3 service areas in the county. We have worked to increase environmental stewardship and educational curriculum and our community center programming. And one of the things that I really am excited about is that we've constructed a series of imagination playgrounds in the county, especially in communities with at-risk populations. We have now 26 in total. So you may be familiar with some of these. A few of the ones that I really like are the Wizard of Oz at Watkins Park, the Viking ship at Upper Marlboro Park, and then Indian Creek and Berwyn Heights. That's a really, really nice one as well. Oh, you guys have gone ahead. In addition, we've, as I've stated already, we've utilize innovative ways to take our services on the go using our mobile vans. Again, we've taken our activities to the community with our mobile playgrounds. And also we've done some strategic hiring in order to improve our data reporting as well as our generation of revenue, so that through the hiring of a database relationship manager and a budget manager and cost recovery management analyst. Next slide. We have several goals and strategies that came out of our plan as well. Some of note I want to mention are aligning with the newly created Youth and Countywide Sports Division. The hope is to implement the strategic plan and increase our access to courts and fields. We want to identify existing parks that need park enhancement and prioritize these using our equity focus areas that have been identified in our plan. We are trying to intensify our active recreational uses, and we want to plan for the expansion of our regional parks and our park facility complexes, much of which are being identified in those master plans as previously mentioned. And then we also want to make sure that we acquire more natural areas that provide stormwater management and flood control. We want to preserve, the natural habitats and fill gaps that are listed in our green infrastructure plan. Next slide. And then there are a variety of key recommendations that we have identified. The first of which is that we want to use the Parkland Dedication Program. We want to make sure that our new residents are adequately served and that we want to explore opportunities near the metro stations. We want to enhance our connectivity by linking our trails to our activity centers, our transit hubs, and some of our areas of new development. In regards to our trails, additionally, we want to add more than 400 miles of hard surface trail and 100 miles of natural surface trail because the population is expected to reach 100 million persons by 2040. And then we also want to make sure that we increase opportunities to support our urban agriculture, to increase our food security and protect the rural characters of certain areas of the county. And so that is it for the recommendations, and that concludes my portion of the presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Hedgepeth.
Our team is here. If any of you have questions, our intention, like we said, is to transmit the plan to the state in August, and then it would move forward for their adoption later this year, and it would be our active LPPRP.
Thank you. Just to be clear, this is and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Ewing, but this is a briefing for us. This is not an action item for us, right?
Exactly. One of the requirements of the state is this presentation, but there is no requirement for a formal plan adoption. It moves through at a different kind of process than a typical master plan or other plan. The state does the final approval themselves, but we do have to bring it before the board.
Excellent. Okay. So, commissioners, questions for staff related to the LPPRP?
I have no questions, but I want to thank them for such a thorough presentation and say congratulations on all the major accomplishments. We hear about them, you know, kind of one-off, but to see it all there together in aggregate is pretty impressive. So great job.
It is impressive. I agree.
And I would like to associate myself with those comments as well. I mean, it really is impressive. I had an incident yesterday where I said to someone, I think I'll start learning to swim. And I said, well, maybe I will go. Well, I go to the Sports and Learning Center quite a bit. And I said, well, I'll go there. And someone suggested that I try another place. And I said, well, maybe I can get in there at a certain time. She said, well, by 8 o'clock, all the senior citizens are in there and you probably cannot get in the pool. You mean senior citizens get up before 8 o'clock to go to the pool? And she was telling me how packed it is at this particular facility. Before 8 o'clock in the morning, senior citizens in the pool. Now, I'm clearly a senior citizen, but I am not going to the pool at 8 o'clock in the morning. I was thrilled to hear that our pools are packed that early. And
Wow.
We just don't know sometimes how amazing this county is with all of the amenities that we offer. And I really did enjoy this presentation this morning, and congratulations.
Yeah, I have the same reaction. It's almost overwhelming, all the things that we're doing, and it just speaks to what a wonderful job you and the rest of the team do. It's quite impressive. I do have one question. You were talking about the difficulty. This is connected to urban parks and the difficulty of finding land inside the Beltway and more urban areas. I'm curious around, because so much of the land inside the Beltway is actually municipal land. Most of our municipalities are inside the Beltway. So can you talk a little bit about how you partner with and how we sort of catalog and quantify and potentially even program municipal parks? Or does it even factor in here?
So it's an interesting thing with POS. There are a set of the municipalities who participate in the program. I think it's 9 out of the 27. MNC PPC provides park and recreation facilities for everything inside the metropolitan district. So there's a couple of those municipalities outside of the metropolitan district that do their own. The ones inside, we either lead everything or we partner with. We did do a special meeting during this LPPRP to really bring those municipalities to the table, because what we were hearing is that their share of POS a lot of times in the urban areas isn't enough to buy land. And so what we proposed to them this time is let's partner, put our POS funds together, or either MNC PPC can take the lead on acquiring property that they've identified in their municipalities that they would like to add to the system. So that's a new approach that we're looking to employ to further our efforts to develop and purchase land inside the Beltway. And we've actually gotten a couple of sites that have been recommended by 2 of our northern municipalities that we're exploring now. And then as for programs, we either provide programs directly ourselves, and then in some cases we have partnerships with municipalities where we develop memorandums of understanding where they're actually developing, adding amenities, and directly doing programming on MNC PPC land. And so those are some of the ways that we work together. And during this LPPRP, one of our big goals was to do a better job talking about all of the parkland in Prince George's County, not just the parkland that we take leadership on. And so those conversations were in the forefront in our municipal listening sessions and follow-up conversations.
That's very helpful to hear. I appreciate that. Appreciate that direction that you're going. That's the only question that I had. Any other questions, commissioners? If not, again, this is just a briefing. I want to thank you all, so we don't have to take any action. I want to thank you all for all the excellent work and the presentation, for you and Ms. Hedgepath and Mr. Ross for the presentation. Thank you all very much. And now we'll move on to the next item. Item 3D has been removed from the agenda, so we're going to item 3E. This is an action item. It's a Verizon lease extension, and I'm not sure who's on this one. I think it is Mr. Herring.
Mr. Herring is not on today. It's going to be me. So good morning. Yes, for the record, I am Tanya Hedgepath, the Park Planning Supervisor here with Prince George's Department of Parks and Recreation. I'm going to present to you the Verizon Wireless Cell Tower Lease Amendment and Extension at Baysox Stadium. Next slide, please. So what you see here is a map that just basically orients you to the stadium, which you see here in the center, and off to the right, I guess, which would be southeast, is the location of the cell tower as it is today. Next slide. Our office was contacted by Verizon Wireless. They wanted to amend and extend their lease agreement for the cellular tower located at Baysox Stadium, as you saw in the map. The original agreement was effective December 1, 2001. It has since expired as of December 1st, 2021. The new amendment, which was included in your packet, has been reviewed, edited, and has been approved by the legal department, and was, as I stated, attached. So per the Maryland Annotated Code 17-204, since the proposed length of the lease, the original term and the amendment will now exceed 20 years, it's required that we need both Prince George's County Planning Board and Prince George's County Council approval. So the only things that have changed are the term of the agreement and the cost for the lease. So the annual fee will equal to $20,988. So that is the extent of my presentation, and our staff is working.
Thank you, appreciate it. So, commissioners, we have a Verizon lease extension in front of us. This is staff's recommending approval. This is an action item for us. Any questions for staff? If not, I'd look for a motion.
No
I
question.
do have a question. I do have one quick question. When you mentioned the $20,988, is that a one-time fee?
Annual, I think.
I would hope.
I'm sorry, it's an equal monthly installments. No, that's a lot to give us $20,000. It's equal monthly installments. That would be great though, but no.
Okay.
But I want to make sure I understand. So what is the total? What is the fee?
That is an annual fee. Mr. Herring is here with me. He was having technical difficulties and he confirmed that that's an annual fee.
Okay, every year for 20 years. Okay, thank you. Other questions? If not, is there a motion?
Move approval, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Washington, second by Vice Chair Bailey. If there's no further discussion on the motion, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 3-0. Thank you, Ms. Hedgepath. Mr. Herring, in absentia, and Ms. Ewing, thank you for all your work on this. And then we have one last item, one last Parks and Rec item, which is also a briefing. This is not an action item. This is item 3F, Bowie Mitchellville Vicinities Sectional Map Amendment. I believe we have Mr. Lester. If you are on, we don't hear you, Mr. Lester.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. This is James Hunt with the Development Review Division. If it pleases the board, they can go ahead and you all can go ahead into the regular agenda items, and I can reach out to Mr. Lester in a moment.
Okay. If you want to, if it's just a minute, we're fine, Mr. Hunt.
Okay. One moment then.
Okay.
Just for FYI, this is a planning department item from community planning, so our park and rec team is going to sign off. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Ms. Ewing.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman,
My apologies. This is Community Planning Division.
Yes, and Mr. Chairman, I did see Mr. Lester just sign on a second ago. There we go.
It's on.
Mr. Lester. Can't hear you. We can see you. Take a second. We're all living in the land of technical difficulties.
I could mime it, but I don't think it would be good.
No, still don't hear you.
And now he's off. Yeah. Oh, he's back on.
Let me go get him. He can come into my office. Tom, let me go get him, okay?
Okay. All right.
Thomas can use my office. Thank you.
Okay. So, folks, let's just take a 2-3 minute break.
Thank you.
This is your new division chief.
Nice to meet you in your new role.
But good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and Planning Board members. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to brief the Planning Board on the recently initiated Bowie, Mitchellville, and vicinity sectional map amendment. I think I have control over the slides. Yes, okay. For the record, I am Thomas Lester, the project manager for the project. Other team members include Redwan Kashik. He's a graduate intern from the University of Maryland, College Park, who will be with the commission until next year. And then project facilitator is also here today, and supervisor Kiera McCoon. Next slide, please. So today I'll be providing a quick briefing on the project. I'll show the project boundary, outline the goals, go over the schedule, and then take any questions that you may have. Next slide. So first, an overview. As you may be aware, this is the follow-up project to the approved master plan. Sectional map amendment is the comprehensive rezoning amendment for a specific geographic area of the county. It reviews all the properties within that area to determine the best zone for that property. And as a follow-up to the master plan, it will conform to the recommendations of the comprehensive zoning chapter specifically. The finalized version of the plan should be published this week and will be made available on our website once it's been published, or it can be purchased by the public for a fee at Planning Information Services at the County Administration Building in Upper Marlboro. Next slide. So the boundary is the same as the master plan. It covers 4 planning areas, including 71A, 71B, 74A, and 74B. Which makes up Greater Bowie, the city of Bowie in its entirety, Mitchellville, and the Collington area. Next slide, please. So what are the goals of a sectional map amendment? The main goals are to implement the comprehensive zoning chapter, to implement the recommended future land use map, and to encourage future development that aligns with the proposed zoning. Of course, rezoning property does not immediately change the land use, but it does ensure that the desired land use is permitted in that zone. Next slide, please. And here's the current project schedule that is subject to change. Keep in mind, because this is a standalone SMA and it's not being done concurrently with a master plan, the process, legal requirements, and timing is a little different than what is typically done with a concurrent SMA. The county hasn't actually pursued a standalone SMA since 1990, and we are working under the new zoning ordinance using the current zones. The project was initiated on July 12th, 2022. We're currently collecting requests for rezonings from the community within the first 30 days after initiation. We'll evaluate those requests and see if they implement the master plan, and if so, incorporate them in the proposed SMA to be released in August of 2022. This is subject to change, but we're going to hold a joint public hearing with the Prince George's County Planning Board and the District Council in September instead of October. This was a development that I found out today, so it wasn't changed on the slide. But the joint public hearing is going to be scheduled for September of this year. And then over the following months, that shouldn't change too much in terms of what you see on the slides. But the planning board should hold a work session and hopefully endorse the proposed SMA in probably November. And then the district council will hold their work session in the new year or February of 2023, unless we do require going to a second joint public hearing.
Hold on one second. I think Director Checkley wants to weigh in.
Yes,
Sure.
excuse me, Chair, I'm sorry. The joint public hearing has not been scheduled. We're not sure exactly what date just yet, but we're looking at September, October.
Yeah. Okay. So it hasn't been scheduled yet, but we are looking at a fall date. So I apologize for that. Yeah, and that's kind of where we are with the schedule. Next slide, please. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, so Mr. Lester's briefed us on the process. Any questions?
No questions.
Okay, and there's no action required on this. So Mr. Lester, thank you for all the work, and we will be tracking this and looking for the fall joint hearing at some point when it gets scheduled.
Great, thank you, and I apologize again for the technical difficulties.
Not a problem at all.
Okay.
We've all been there. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. So we have a number of items of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve items on the consent agenda.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. If there's no discussion on the motion, I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 3-0. And now we're on to the regular agenda items. First regular agenda item is item number 5. This is Community Planning Division, proposed designation of 1 Prince George's County Historic Site, John and Mary White House. Hold on one sec. Okay, we have Mr. Gross, who will give us a brief overview of this. Take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Board. For the record, I am Tom Gross, Acting Planning Supervisor of the Historic Preservation Section. The item before you this morning is the potential historic site designation of the property at 3602 41st Avenue in Colmar Manor, identified as the John and Mary White House. Next slide, please. Just wanted to provide a brief view of the house, and a fuller presentation was offered at the joint public hearing, so I won't go through all of those slides, but just as a reminder of the property. At its public hearing on April 19th, 2022, the Historic Preservation Commission reviewed the documentation prepared for the subject property and the staff recommendation on the proposed designation. Next slide, please. Based on the documentation, the staff recommendation, and the support of the property owner, the HPC found that the proposed historic site could be found to meet 3 historic site designation criteria of subtitle 29-104, which you see here on the slide. This recommendation was the basis of the joint public hearing, which was held on June 21st, 2022 with the Planning Board and the District Council. At that hearing, staff made a presentation on the history and significance of the property and the Historic Preservation Commission's recommendation. No public testimony was received at the time of the hearing. However, before the close of the record on June 28th, 2022, 2 items of testimony were received, including a statement from the property owner, Douglas Bowles, in support of the proposed designation. Next slide, please. Should the Planning Board concur with the recommendation of the Historic Preservation Commission that the property be designated as a historic site, staff will prepare a transmittal letter from the Planning Board to the District Council recommending historic site designation of the John and Mary White House. Should the Planning Board choose to make different recommendations to the District Council, a revised transmittal letter will be prepared by staff. And this concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gross. So the staff's recommendation is for us to approve the designation of this historic site. Is there any questions for staff? And if not, I will look for a motion.
Move that we accept the recommendation of staff, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Washington, second by Vice Chair Bailey. If there's no further discussion on the motion, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 3-0 to approve staff's recommendation and approve designation of this historic site. Thank you, Mr. Gross. Next item on our agenda is item number 6. This is a preliminary plan of subdivision 4-21049, case Yurgat. We have Mr. Antonetti, who is the attorney for the applicant. We have Ms. Gupta, who's going to be providing us the staff review. There will be other speakers. I don't think we have anyone speaking in opposition to this, but I'll turn it over to Ms. Gupta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and doing a sound check and video check.
You're all good. We hear you and see you fine.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. For the record, I'm Mridula Gupta with the subdivision section. Item number 6 on the agenda is a preliminary plan of subdivision 4-21049 titled Case Yurgat. The preliminary plan of subdivision proposes 610 lots and 58 parcels for development of 493 single-family detached and 117 single-family attached dwelling units. As a matter of housekeeping, the additional backup includes 2 exhibits received from the applicant prior to July 19th noon deadline. Next slide, please. The site is located in the central area of Prince George's County within Planning Area 78 and Council District 6. Next slide, please. More specifically, the site is located on the south side of Westphalia Road, approximately 2,000 feet east of its intersection with Ritchie Marlborough Road. Next slide, please. The image to the left shows that the subject site, outlined in red, is located in the Legacy Comprehensive Design, or LCD zone. The surrounding properties are located in the LCD, residential rural, agricultural residential, and the residential estate zones. The property zoning notwithstanding, this preliminary plan of subdivision was reviewed in accordance with the prior zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations as required by section 24-1703B of the subdivision regulations, because the site has a comprehensive design plan approved under the old zoning ordinance, which is currently valid. Under the prior zoning ordinance, the site is in the residential medium development, or the RM zone, as shown on the image to the right. This preliminary plan of subdivision was evaluated according to the standards of that zone. Next slide, please. The site is located in the Military Installation Overlay, MIO zone for height under both the prior and current zoning ordinance. Next slide, please. The aerial photograph shows that a trash hauling operation and a sediment and erosion control service exists on the northernmost portion of the site. The remainder of the property is used for agriculture and a residential dwelling with accessory structures. All existing structures on the site are proposed to be raised. The following development abuts the subject site: single-family residential development to the north and west, and vacant land to the east and south. Next slide, please. The site map shows the property delineated on this slide in pink as extensive areas of slopes which drain to a stream system located in the center of the site. Next slide, please. This slide shows the master plan rights of way in the immediate vicinity of the site. The subject site is outlined in blue, dark blue, I'm sorry. The Westphalia Road, a collector located north of the site, is highlighted in green. Major collector MC 631 is located east of the site and is highlighted in blue. A small portion of MC 631 is located on the subject site. The primary roads P616, P617, and P619 are highlighted in pink. P616 enters the site in the north at its intersection with Westphalia Road and exits the site on the south side. P617 originates with its intersection with P616 within the site and continues easterly to exit the site before intersecting with MC 631. Next slide, please. The critical intersections determined to be impacted by the development are highlighted with yellow squares on this slide. Critical intersection 3 of Maryland 4 and Westphalia Road is scheduled for improvements per Council Resolution CR-66-2010. The applicant will be required to pay into the Westphalia Public Facilities Financing and Implementation Program, or PFFIP, a cost allocation based upon the percentage of average daily trips generated by this development passing through this intersection. Critical intersection 8 at Maryland 4 and Suitland Parkway is scheduled for a grade-separated interchange for the Maryland State Highway Administration Consolidated Transportation Program. Master Plan roadways P616 and P617 impacting the proposed development are proposed to be constructed as part of this application. The intersection of Ritchie Marlborough Road, Westphalia Road, and Orion Lane, which is labeled as intersection 7, did not pass the three-step test for unsignalized intersections, and therefore a signal warrant study at this intersection is included as a recommended condition. The analysis performed by staff found that all critical intersections will operate at adequate levels of service given the proposed development. Next slide, please. The overall view of the preliminary plan of subdivision shows the layout of the proposed lots and parcels in red and road circulation in purple. The environmental regulated features known as Primary Management Area, or PMA, is highlighted in pink. The site is primarily accessed by Westphalia Road located to the north. Master Plan roads P616 and P617, along with a network of additional public and private streets, is proposed for the subdivision to provide adequate frontage and direct access for the proposed lots. The right-of-way for Master Plan Road MC 631 is proposed to be dedicated but not constructed, since it is not required for direct access to any proposed lot or parcel. Adequate transportation facilities will exist to serve the proposed subdivision, with the proposed right-of-way dedication of public and private streets internal to the property and along Westphalia Road. The applicant proposes private recreational facilities to meet mandatory dedication of parkland requirement pursuant to Section 24-134A of the prior subdivision regulations. These facilities are proposed in the open space parcels highlighted as green on the slide. Since the subject property adjoins the Westphalia Central Park, the applicant is also required to make a monetary contribution into a park club, as recommended by the 2007 approved Westphalia Sector Plan. The subject property is also home to the McGregor Family Cemetery Historic Site, located in the northwest portion of the property and highlighted in orange. This cemetery is proposed to be located on its own open space parcel, owned and maintained by the Homeowners Association. Appropriate conditions are included to provide for protection of the cemetery during construction and for perpetual maintenance afterwards. Adequate public facilities, including police and fire and rescue facilities, are found to be adequate to serve the subject site. Redesignation of the subject property from water and sewer category 4 to category 3 will be necessary prior to final plat approval. Next slide, please. The Type 1 tree conservation plan shows the subject site outlined in red, road circulation highlighted in purple, and the PMA in pink. The proposed on-site woodland preservation and reforestation areas are highlighted here in green. Woodland conservation requirement for this development is proposed to be addressed with on-site woodland preservation and reforestation and off-site woodland conservation credits. The applicant has requested a variance from section 25-122B1G, which requires preservation of specimen trees. This preliminary plan of subdivision proposes removal of 25 specimen trees on the site, the location of which are shown by red crosses on this slide. These trees are in very poor to fair condition, and many of them are associated with the construction of master plan roads P-616 and P-617. Other specimen trees are proposed for removal due to grading required to realize the functional and efficient development of the site. Staff supports the variance for the removal of these specimen trees requested by the applicant based on the findings on pages 42 to 45 of the staff report. Next slide, please. This slide discusses the proposed impacts to the primary management area. There are 10 areas of proposed impacts, totaling approximately 15.82 acres, locations of which are highlighted here in pink, purple, and orange. These PMA impacts are associated with construction of master plan roads, stormwater management outfalls, utility connections, and an internal trail. Staff recommend that revisions to site grading and stormwater management design be considered to reduce the impacts to the PMA. While impact 10 to the PMA is supported by staff in its entirety, impacts 1 to 3 and 5 to 9 are partially supported, and impact 4, which is due to a proposed 6-foot wide internal trail system, is not supported. Staff's analysis of PMA impacts and its findings are listed on pages 45 to 49 of the staff report. Next slide, please. As mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, the additional backup includes 2 applicants' exhibits. Applicant Exhibit 1 includes proposed revisions to staff's recommended conditions 13, 14, 15, 22A, and 26, which appear on pages 51 to 58 of the staff report. Staff has reviewed the suggested revisions and concur with them, except addition of the sentence in condition 15, which reads as follows: the phasing plan shall address the timing for construction of the following roads. Staff proposes deletion of the sentence since it is redundant. In addition, staff requests to correct a typographical error in the recommended condition 1C, which lists master plan road P616 twice. The condition should read P616 and P617 instead of P616 and P616. In conclusion, staff recommends that the planning board adopt the findings and approve the preliminary plan of subdivision 4-21049, Type 1 Tree Conservation Plan TCP 1-006-2022-01, as well as variance to section 25-122B1G, subject to the conditions found on pages 51 through 58 of the staff report, as revised by applicant Exhibit 1, with the deletion of the redundant sentence in condition 15 and correction of the typographical error in condition 1C. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Gupta. Questions for staff?
Ms. Gupta, would you please clarify your change or recommended change to applicant exhibit number 1? I didn't catch number 15. What are you suggesting is be deleted?
Yes, Commissioner, let me bring it up. So condition 15, it starts, if development is phased, the applicant shall provide a phasing plan with supplemental operational analysis and adequate justification as part of each specific design plan to show the phasing of transportation improvements listed below and as provided in conditions 13 and 14 to the phase development of the site. So the condition as it states now does, it reads further, a determination shall be made at that time as to when these improvements shall have full financial assurances and have been permitted for construction through the operating agency's access permit process. And then the applicant in his exhibit, they added the next sentence, the phasing plan shall address the timing for construction of the following roads. So staff believes that that last sentence that the applicant added is not necessary.
I understand, but are you including the last sentence in addition to A, B, C, and D, or is it just the last sentence? That's what I was asking you to.
Just the last sentence, Madam Commissioner.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Gupta. I appreciate it. That's the only question I had at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. No other questions for staff. We will turn to the applicant, Mr. Antonetti. You've heard the staff report, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll be brief. Good morning to the record. My name is Robert Antonetti with the law firm of Shipley & Horn. I'm here with my partner, Arthur J. Horn, and our senior land planner, John Ferrante, and we are pleased to represent the applicant, Dreamfinders Homes, LLC, on this preliminary plan of subdivision. Today, just with our development team, we have Mr. Andy Garish with Dreamfinders. We have Mr. Pat Ricker, a representative of the property owner. We have Mr. Ken Dunn and David Bickle from Soltez, the civil engineers on the project, and we have Mr. Michael Lenhart from Lenhart Traffic Consulting. First, I'd just like to thank Ms. Gupta for her thorough review and for her coordination. She has mastered the ability to coordinate and to bring various elements together on the planning staff side to review, large cases such as this, and it is greatly appreciated. The end product with staff and what's brought to the board is made that much better when that level of coordination occurs, and she is just phenomenal at it. So I do want to thank her for her efforts in that regard. As you've heard today, we are in the third step of the multi-step CDZ or LCD zone process. The board has already reviewed a basic plan amendment, which was approved by the council, a comprehensive design plan amendment, which was approved by this board back in May. And this is the third step, the preliminary plan of subdivision. The next step is STP, which will provide many of the details in terms of architecture and such for the units that are proposed. As you've seen in your staff report, this is a unique project in the sense that it is a residential offering with roughly over 80% of its units and lots proposed in this application will be single-family detached units. There will be single-family attached townhouses that are offered, and they will provide a complementary component with this project. So we feel it will serve an important niche within the Westphalia market and the greater county residential housing market. So we're very excited to move that forward and provide more details at time of SDP. This application does meet all the applicable development standards recently approved by the board in the CDP amendment 06-00101. It does actually represent a reduction in density from what was approved in the basic plan and the CDP, roughly 51 units, and that's due to an exercise in final engineering as you figure out what can be built where, using more detailed data as we proceed through the multi-step process. The project will ultimately include several amenities such as trails, a clubhouse, a pool, and smaller pocket recreation areas, and those will be verified and discussed in detail also at time of SDP. This application does represent an appropriate transition from the higher density in the Westphalia Town Center and surrounding projects that are developing to the surrounding and existing communities. And I mention that in part because this applicant has made a continuous effort to communicate with the adjoining neighborhoods. This would include the Sun Valley Estates to the west and Westphalia Woods to the north. Representatives of the ownership met with members of both communities regarding this application on June 18th, 2022 at approximately 9 a.m. and there was a pretty good turnout. The overall sentiment in that meeting was of strong support for this application, and they appreciate the communication, and we'll continue that line of communication as we move forward with later applications. I will mention that the Westphalia Woods subdivision has voiced a concern. You've heard this before, and from myself and from others, regarding the potential connection of Mattapique Drive to Westphalia Road, this community, and other communities and beyond. There is a concern that Mattapique to the north, which is outside of the bounds of this application, may one day be connected all the way to Ritchie Marlborough Road and become a cut-through for traffic in the Westphalia sector plan area. This applicant doesn't support that ultimately, although it's not a decision to be made by the board here, but we do want to go on the record that we feel that the master plan network, which didn't include such a connection necessarily, can survive and be adequate without such a connection ever being made in the future. So we just wanted to go on record to show our support for the community in Westphalia Woods about how Mattapique Drive may be treated in the future. So just putting that on for the record.
Thank you.
To the extent that that there are any questions, the applicant, in conclusion, does agree that this application meets all the requirements for approval of a preliminary plan of subdivision in the applicable sections of the subdivision regulations. The applicant does agree with the findings of staff and recommended conditions as set forth in Applicant's Exhibit 1, including the minor revision to the sentence in Condition 15, which we are okay with that coming out if the board's pleasure does agree with that as well. In sum, we do respectfully request your support of Preliminary Plan 4-21049, and we do thank you for your consideration. And our development team and myself are here to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Antonetti. Questions for the applicant's representative for Mr. Antonetti?
Just one, and it's very, what is the origin of Case Your God? Name.
Yes. Well, historically, the Woodside Village project was an assemblage of land brought together by Toll Brothers around 2005, 2006, and it consisted of essentially 5 farms that existed off of Westphalia Road. 2 of those farms were owned, one was owned by Mr. Dave Case, and the other one was by the Yergat family. And these are the 2 farms that this applicant has been successfully able to assemble and is moving to develop. The 3 other farms are the Holy property, the Evelyn Suit Farm, which is now owned by Park and Planning, which is the largest of the several farms, and then the Bean property, which is also going through separate development applications. So it has taken on a little bit of a different life, but the original naming conventions are derived from the owners of the farms that were part of the original assemblage back in 2005, 2006.
Well, I thank you for that bit of history this morning, Mr. Antonetti.
You're welcome.
And I'm glad you asked the question because I was wondering that myself. So thank you.
And Ms. Cooper, I think I read your staff report twice just to make sure I didn't miss it in there before I had to go on record asking the questions. So.
Any other questions for Mr. Antonetti, Vice Chair Bailey?
No questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Antonetti. So I don't believe we have anyone else signed up to speak for or against this. You've heard from staff, you've heard from the applicant. They're in agreement with, staff is in agreement, approval with conditions. There's some minor revisions to the conditions. Is there anything else that you have, commissioners? If not, I'd look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff and approve preliminary plan 4-21049, TCP 1-006-2022-01, and approve variance to section 25-122B1G, along with the conditions as outlined in staff's report, with the minor typographical correction as noted by staff, and as further amended by applicant exhibit number 1, with one change to, with one modification to condition 15 in applicant exhibit number 1, and that is to strike the last sentence, which reads, "The phasing plan shall address the timing for construction of the following roads," from applicant exhibit number 1.
Thank you.
Second, and thank you, Commissioner Washington.
That was an excellent motion. There's a motion and a second under discussion. Let me just check, Ms. Gupta, Mr. Antonetti, did Commissioner Washington capture all that?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. Well done. Well done. There's no further discussion on the motion. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. Ayes have it 3-0. Thank you both very much for your time. Thank you, Mr. Antonetti. Thank you, and team, and thank you, Ms. Gupta. So our final item on the agenda, we have item 7, preliminary plan of subdivision 4-21029, Parkside, section 7. The staff presentation will be by Mr. Diaz-Campbell, and we have the attorneys for the applicant, Ms. Marvin Jo Camp and Norman Rivera. And I will turn to Ms. There may be other folks who will be speaking. We'll leave that to the representatives for the applicant. I'll turn that to Mr. Diaz-Campbell for the staff presentation. You're on mute, Mr. Diaz-Campbell, or we can't hear you. Still can't hear you. Take your time. We've been having technical difficulties all day, so we can take a few minutes if we need to. Nothing yet. Mr. Diaz-Campbell is asking for just a minute so we can go get a microphone. So let's just take a 2-3 minute break, folks.
Members of the board. For the record, I am Eddie Diaz-Campbell, Senior Planner with the Subdivision Section. Item number 7 on the agenda is the preliminary plan of subdivision for Parkside Section 7, 4-21029. The subject project proposes 627 lots and 95 parcels for the development of 627 single-family attached units and 32,000 square feet of commercial development. The site is in the northeasternmost portion of the overall Parkside development, formerly known as Smith Home Farms. The proposed development is consistent with a comprehensive design plan amendment for Parkside, CDP-0501-03, which was approved in March this year. The CDP amendment reduced the overall density and commercial intensity of Section 7. As a matter of housekeeping, staff has received 3 items of additional backup from the applicant, which were received before the noon deadline on June 19. The first is a letter requesting 5 revisions to recommended conditions of approval and 1 revision to the findings. The second is a letter from the applicant's traffic consultant concerning the calculation of the project's contribution to the Westphalia Public Facilities Financing and Implementation Program. The third is an exhibit illustrating how recommended condition 1C would be addressed. Next slide, please. This site is located in the central part of Prince George's County within Planning Area 78 and Council District 6. Next slide, please. More specifically, the site is located approximately 1,650 feet northeast of the intersection of Central Park Drive and Rock Spring Drive. Next slide, please. The zoning map shows that the property is in the Legacy Comprehensive Design, or LCD zone. Lands northeast, east, south, and west of the property are also zoned LCD. The land to the northeast is the KC Ergut property we just discussed. The land to the east and south is owned by MNC PPC and is future parkland. The land to the west is Section 4 of Parkside. The land northwest of the property is zoned rural residential and consists of existing subdivisions of one-family detached dwellings. Next slide, please. The LCD zone requires that properties within it be developed according to the standards of the prior comprehensive design zoning in effect prior to April 1st, 2022. Under the prior zoning, this property was partly in the residential medium development, or RM zone, and partly in the local activity center, or LAC zone. Section 7 is the only section of Parkside that featured LAC zoning. All other sections were entirely within the RM zone. Next slide, please. The overlay map shows the property is in the Military Installation Overlay, or MIO zone, with all of the property in the MIO for height and the western part of the property in the MIO for noise. Next slide, please. Prior to April 1st, 2022, the property was in the version of the MIO zone regulated under the prior zoning ordinance. This project was evaluated according to the standards of the former MIO zone, and related findings are given in finding 3 of the technical staff report. Next slide, please. The aerial photograph shows that the site consists of former farmland, which has experienced natural regrowth of vegetation since about 2014. Also visible in the aerial are other sections of the park site, either completed or recently under construction. Section 4 to the west is shown under construction, while sections 3, 2, 1B, and 1A are shown complete further to the west. Westphalia Central Park and sections 5 and 6 are shown under construction to the south. Section 7 will be the last section of Parkside to be developed. Next slide, please. This photo shows another view of the site from an aerial perspective. Next slide, please. The site map shows that the site has a hilly topography, with a stream valley curving around the developable area of the site from the northwest to the southeast. The author provided a geotechnical report with a preliminary plan application, which included a preliminary slope stability analysis showing the site to have a less than 1.5 safety factor line. The geotechnical report also showed that the proposed lots will avoid areas of marlborough clay. Next slide, please. The master plan right-of-way map shows 2 master plan roads passing through the site, including an extension of Central Park Drive crossing from west to east, known as Major Collector 631, and an extension of Woodyard Road, which will extend from the south to its intersection with Central Park Drive as Major Collector 632, then proceed further north as Primary Road 616. Adequate right-of-way is shown on the preliminary plan for development of these master plan roads. The master plan right-of-way map also shows a variety of existing and proposed master plan roads within the other sections of Parkside and outside the overall development, which will serve the Westphalia area. Central Park Drive connects west to Maryland 4 and Maryland 337, while Central Park Drive and Woodyard Road are expected to alternately both connect north to Westphalia Road. Next slide, please. The critical intersections determined to be impacted by the development are shown by the blue circles on this slide and are further described in detail in the staff report. The analysis performed by staff found that all the signalized intersections will operate adequately under total traffic conditions, with the exceptions of Ritchie Marlborough Road and Sandsbury Road at the intersection marked with a 1, and Maryland 4 and Westphalia Road at the intersection marked with a 3. To address these inadequacies, staff is recommending the applicants construct improvements to the intersection of Ritchie Marlborough Road and Sandsbury Road. Staff is also recommending the applicant contribute a fee to the Westphalia Public Facilities Financing Implementation Program for the improvement of the intersection of Maryland 4 and Westphalia Road. Details of the road improvements to be provided and a calculation of the fee to be provided are contained in finding 6 of the staff report. Next slide, please. The preliminary plan shows 627 lots and 95 parcels, outlined in red. Existing and proposed public rights-of-way are shown in dark blue, while proposed private roads are shown in light blue. The primary mansion area is shown outlined in pink. Adequate public facilities, including water, sewer, and police facilities, are available to serve the site. Adequate fire and rescue facilities are available to serve the residential portion of the site. Staff did find, however, that the commercial portion of the development failed the 4-minute travel time test from the first due fire and rescue station. Therefore, mitigation will be required prior to the issuance of use and occupancy permits, as described in finding 9 of the staff report. Both land dedication and on-site recreation facilities are to be provided to meet the mandatory dedication of parkland requirement. The land to be dedicated is located at the southernmost edge of the site, south of Central Park Drive, and will become part of Westphalia Central Park. Next slide, please. This slide shows the portion of the site that will be developed with residential and commercial uses. The commercial development is proposed on a large parcel near the bottom of the slide, at the intersection of Central Park Drive and Woodyard Road. Other large parcels shown on this slide are to be used for recreation facilities or stormwater management. The residential development consists of both townhouse lots, which will be front-loaded from private streets, and townhouse lots which will be rear-loaded from private alleys. A small number of lots will front on the public streets, but will still take access from private alleys. The public streets include the previously mentioned Central Park Drive and Woodyard Road, as well as one more public street, Victoria Park Drive, which connects west to Section 4 near the top left of this slide. Next slide, please. Section 24-128B7A of the prior subdivision regulations allows lots in comprehensive design zones to be served by alleys through the lots front on the public street. The applicant has proposed that the majority of the lots be served by alleys, as shown in yellow on this slide, front on private streets and open spaces rather than on public streets. In order to permit the alleys to serve these lots, the applicant submitted a request for a variation from Section 24-128B7A. Staff found the required findings of approval of the variation have been met, as described in finding 7 of the staff report. Next slide, please. This application is subject to the Woodland Conservation Ordinance, and a Type 1 tree conservation plan has been filed with the application. The submitted TCP1 covers the whole parkside development, and it has been revised several times in previous applications. Under the latest revision, the woodland conservation requirement for the overall development is supposed to be met with 29.04 acres of woodland preservation, 135.6 acres of afforestation, and 88.91 acres of off-site mitigation. The circled area is the area subject to this preliminary plan application. Next slide, please. The next 2 slides show in greater detail the area of the TCP1, which is subject to this preliminary plan application. Property lines are shown in red and right-of-ways are shown in blue, while woodland preservation areas are shown in bright green, and afforestation areas are shown in light green. The area north of the on-site stream valley was previously proposed for development, but is now shown as afforestation due to the proposed reduction in density. This slide also shows the locations of 2 proposed impacts to the primary management area for stormwater outfalls. Next slide, please. This slide shows 1 additional impact to the primary management area for Central Park Drive's crossing over the stream valley. Staff is recommending approval of all 3 primary management area impacts, as discussed in finding 13 of the staff report. Next slide, please. In conclusion, subdivision staff recommends that the planning board adopt the findings and approve preliminary plan subdivision 4-21029, Parkside Section 7, as well as Type 1 Tree Conservation Plan TCP1-038-05-04, and a variation from Section 24-128B7A, subject to conditions contained in the staff report. The applicant has communicated 5 proposed revisions to the conditions of approval and 1 proposed revision to the findings recommended in the report, which are included on the record. Staff agrees with the proposed revisions to conditions 1C, 20E, and 37, which offer corrections and clarifications on the requirements of these conditions. Staff does not agree with the applicant's proposed revisions to conditions 16 and 26, or with the proposed finding. However, the applicant has indicated to staff that they are no longer requesting these revised conditions and finding. This concludes staff's presentation.
Sorry, my mic was off. Thank you, Ms. Diaz-Campbell. Questions for staff?
Yes, just to clarify, Mr. Diaz-Campbell, so the conditions that you agree with in applicant exhibit number 1 include 1C, 20, and 37?
Yes, 20E specifically.
20E, thank you very much. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Other questions? If not, I will turn. Vice Chair Bailey?
Was that 20E that he is agreeing with?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, I will turn to the applicant. Ms. Camp, you are the lead attorney for the applicant. Take it away. The floor is yours.
Good morning, and you will see from the screen that I am not Rachel, but we are here at Dewberry. So
I checked that twice. when I thought that was a red jacket, I said, "Oh, that's not Miss Camp." Okay.
No. Member Bailey, you know that would never happen. This is a bright pink.
Thank you. Okay.
You know that would never happen. Okay. So, good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Board. For the record, I am Marva Jo Camp, and am serving as the lead attorney for the present case. I am joined today by Attorney Norman Rivera, Rachel Leisinger from Dewberry, and Wes Guckard, who is our traffic consultant. Before I begin, I just wanted to say this case is a little nostalgic for me. It was actually the first case I ever worked on when it was Smith Home Farm, and I was just learning land use, and we left the project, and to now come back and be at the end in Section 7 is bittersweet, but just kind of special for me, and so it's a pleasure to be able to speak today. Let me first say that I wanted to express my appreciation to staff. We have had lots of conversations around this project. I wanted to give a special thank you to Mr. Eddie Diaz-Campbell for his coordination of all the sections, and for all of the staff members who worked with us to be able to come today and make the presentation that we will make. And I know, Mr. Chair, that you want it brief, so we will make sure that happens. As Mr. Eddie Diaz-Campbell said, the applicant submitted 5 conditions or recommended modifications to the conditions proposed by staff. Staff accepted 3 of those conditions. I did want to raise for the record, we are in a concurrence, with the decision of staff and the conditions that have been recommended. But I did want to, for the record, raise a couple of things that will come back before you. The first has to do with the inclusion of stream restoration in the conditions. It is our understanding from staff, having had quite a few conversations, there are conditions in there that talk about the findings that outline the previous conditions, and I believe it's SDP 1002 on stream restoration. There's some remaining stream restoration that is slated for Section 7, but we all agree that it is more appropriate to have a determination of whether or not applicant is responsible for that restoration at the time of SDP, and my client is satisfied based on the conversations that we will have that conversation, and so we won't raise it today. The second one has to do with the PFFIP, which has always been an issue in Westphalia. There are in the conditions some square footage costs that are stated. We believe that that needs to be revisited for a number of reasons, but we don't think, particularly since it's dealing with a commercial, that we need to address it today as part of this preliminary plan, but do look forward to revisiting it either in the form of a revision to a condition or a new preliminary plan as it relates to the commercial. And then the only other that I wanted to talk about, and very happy, I think Mr. Eddie Diaz Campbell mentioned dedication. We have already dedicated Central Park, portions of Central Park Drive, and construction has begun, so we can start to address some of the concerns as it relates to the master plans. And then finally, I just wanted to say that although we were not required to do so, we take strongly our obligation to meet with the community, because we're in a legacy, so we aren't under the new rules. But we did have a meeting with the community and share with them what we plan to do, and assured them that we would continue the excellence that started at the beginning of, I call it Smith, but Parkside Section 7. And it seemed, based on those who participated, that they were very pleased. And with that, we want to again say thank you to staff for all of their efforts and moving this project forward and to becoming able to finish Parkside. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the trip down memory lane as well with your, how you encountered this so many years ago. So commissioners, any questions for Ms. Leitzinger? Haha. For Ms.
No questions.
Okay, so I just have one question, Ms. Camp. So I just want to make sure that we are all on the same page here. So you have we have the applicant's proposed revised conditions, and you have agreed to drop 16 and 26.
That's right. So we would only do the 3 that were referenced by Mr. Diaz Campbell, the 120 and I think 37. Yes, the other ones we have dropped. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So no questions for Ms. Camp. As is often the case, we have there's lots and lots of work that gets done behind the scenes by the time it gets to us, and I so appreciate the work of staff and the work of the applicant and all the efforts to come to agreement on this. I know it's been a long time coming, so thank you all very much. If there's no questions, we have no one else signed up to speak for or against this, I will turn to you all, my fellow commissioners, and what is your pleasure? Wait 1 sec, we have Mr. Hunt. Nothing? Okay. So is there an action?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the findings of staff and approve preliminary plan 4-21029 TCP 1-038-05-04 and approve variation from section 24-128B7A, along with the conditions as outlined in staff's report, and conditions 1C, 20E, and 37 as amended by applicant exhibit number 1.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by the master motion maker, and we have a second by Vice Chair Bailey. Any further discussion on the motion? Then I'll call the roll. Commissioner Washington.
Vote aye.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it, 3-0. Thanks again, Ms. Camp, Mr. Rivera, Mr. Diaz-Campbell. Thanks for all your work on this. And that is, I believe that is the last agenda item we have. Mr. Hunt, any further business before us today?
Mr. Chair, there are no additional business items before the planning board today. Thank you.
Thank you. With no further items before us, without objection, we are adjourned. Thanks everybody for your time.
Thank you all. Have a good day. Thank you.
Great.